Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video, I will discuss ISA 500 audit evidence, which is one of the most fundamental standards in auditing. Every audit opinion is based on evidence. In fact, without sufficient and appropriate evidence, the auditor simply cannot form a reliable conclusion. Therefore, understanding ISA 500 is essential for both exams and real-world auditing. First of all, the objective of ISA 500 is to enable the auditor to design and perform audit procedures to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. As a result, the auditor can draw reasonable conclusions on which to base the audit opinion. Before going further, let me define audit evidence. Audit evidence refers to all the information used by the auditor in arriving at conclusions. This includes information from accounting records, supporting documents, external confirmations, analytical data, observations, and inquiries. In other words, audit evidence is everything that supports the auditor's opinion. At this point, it is important to understand two key concepts: sufficiency and appropriateness. First, sufficiency refers to the quantity of audit evidence. In general, the higher the audit risk, the more evidence is required. For example, if internal controls are weak, the auditor will need more evidence. On the other hand, appropriateness refers to the quality of audit evidence. This includes relevance and reliability. The reliability of evidence depends on its source and nature. For example, evidence obtained from external sources is more reliable than internal evidence. Evidence obtained directly by the auditor is more reliable than indirectly obtained evidence. Similarly, written evidence is more reliable than oral ones, and the original documents are more reliable than the copies. Therefore, auditors always prefer independent and direct evidence. Auditor must balance quality and quantity. High quality evidence can reduce the need for large quantities. Audit evidence can be obtained from different sources. Firstly, from internal sources such as accounting records and internal reports. Secondly, from external sources such as bank confirmations, supplier statements, and third-party documents. In general, external evidence is considered more reliable, especially when it is obtained independently. ISA 500 identifies several key audit procedures, including inspection, observation, inquiry, confirmation, recalculation, reperformance, and analytical procedures. Inspection involves examining accounting records or documents, whether internal or external, or physical examination of a tangible asset. Observation consists of looking at a process or procedure, like controls, being performed by others. Evidence from observation is limited to the time of observation and is also effective when people know that they are being observed. Inquiry means seeking information from knowledgeable persons within the entity or outside the entity. Inquiry alone is not sufficient appropriate audit evidence. Auditors should always perform further procedures to obtain audit evidence. External confirmation is the process of obtaining evidence by auditor directly from a third party in written form, like on paper or electronic or other medium. Recalculation consists of checking mathematical accuracy of documents or records. Reperformance means auditor independently performing procedures or controls that were originally performed by entity as part of its internal control. Analytical procedures means evaluation of financial information through comparisons and analysis of plausible relationships with other financial and non-financial information. Each procedure provides different types and levels of evidence. In some cases, management may use an expert, such as a valuer or actuary. In such situations, the auditor must evaluate the competence of the expert and the objectivity of the expert, and also the work performed by the expert. Therefore, the auditor cannot blindly rely on expert reports. Furthermore, Auditors often use information generated by the entity itself. However, before relying on such information, the auditor must evaluate whether it is accurate, complete, and reliable. Otherwise, conclusions based on such information may be incorrect. Sometimes audit evidence may be inconsistent or contradictory. For example, management explanations may conflict with external confirmations. In such cases, the auditor must investigate the inconsistency and obtain additional evidence. Consequently, the auditor should not ignore conflicting evidence. Finally, after collecting all evidence, the auditor must evaluate whether sufficient evidence has been obtained and the evidence is appropriate. If the evidence is insufficient, the auditor must perform additional procedures. If sufficient evidence cannot be obtained, this may lead to a modified opinion under ISA 705. To summarize, ISA 500 is the foundation of the entire audit process. First, the auditor gathers audit evidence. Next, the auditor ensures that the evidence is both sufficient and appropriate. Then, the auditor evaluates the reliability of evidence. Finally, conclusions are drawn to support the audit opinion. In conclusion, without strong and reliable audit evidence, an audit opinion has no value. And that brings us to the end of our video on ISA 500 audit evidence. That's all for today. Allah Hafiz.